The girl had been dead for 3 days, and today was the day she was to be buried. But suddenly, the corpse's mouth opened wide and a huge moth crawled out of it. The relatives in the mourning hall were unaware of the strange occurrence in the morgue. All they saw were many moths gathering on the ceiling. The priest had an ominous premonition that some mysterious force was approaching. He kept chanting scriptures, hoping the deceased could rest in peace.
하나님 우리 아버지와 주 예수 그리스도께서 내리시는 은총과 평화가
However, that mysterious force was getting closer and closer. There were gusts of cold wind, the candles on the altar went out, and the priest even spat out blood. He went mad and banged his head against the altar. The deceased was named Somi. When she was alive, she was a cute and lovely little girl with a happy family. Her father was a famous cardiac surgeon, and his skillful hands had cured thousands of patients without a single failure. Perhaps it was a joke played by fate. Somi suffered from a serious heart disease. When it finally came time for a heart transplant, Somi's father decided to perform the operation himself. He wouldn't entrust his daughter's life to anyone else. The transplant operation was indeed successful, and Somi recovered and was discharged from the hospital soon. But 4 months later, this poor girl ended up lying in the cold morgue.
차소미 고객님, 병사로 인한 사망 확인했습니다.
When receiving the confirmation of his daughter's death, Somi's father felt as if his world had collapsed. Somi's funeral was proceeding in an orderly manner in the funeral parlor of Seoul Central Hospital. According to the Korean 3-day funeral custom, the deceased should be laid in the funeral parlor for 3 days before being buried. During these 3 days, relatives and friends could come to the funeral parlor to pay their respects to the deceased. Looking at their daughter as beautiful as a flower, who could now only show her smile in the photo, Somi's parents were in deep grief. The staff at the funeral parlor suggested that for young people who passed away, a simplified funeral was usually chosen. In this way, the family's pain would be lessened. But Somi's grandmother didn't agree.
내 새끼, 우리 귀한 손녀 보내는데 약식장 3일이 아니라 300일을 해도 모자를 뻔해.
However, at this time, there were some problems with Somi's corpse in the morgue. The freezer in the morgue broke down. Taking this opportunity, the staff sorted out Somi's body again, stretching out the stiff parts to make sure the girl could be buried looking nice. But they found that Somi's right hand had been clenched tightly and couldn't be opened no matter what. The staff didn't dare to force it open, so they called Somi's father. Somi's father grasped his daughter's hand painfully. He opened the clenched fist and found a Polaris bracelet inside. He still remembered that it was the lucky bracelet he had put on his daughter himself before her operation.
아빠가 북극성이라고 생각하고 절대로 길 잊어버리지 않게.
The more Somi's father thought about it, the more heartbroken he felt. He put the bracelet on his daughter's cold wrist again. The 3-day funeral continued. At this time, Somi's father's colleagues from Seoul Central Hospital also came to pay their respects. On the surface, they all seemed very sad. But when they went out to smoke, the things they said were rather sarcastic. They accused Somi's father of always relying on his own abilities and being picky about others. Now that he had killed his daughter by the operation, he finally got his lesson.
수술 퍼펙트 했다더니 뭔 일이래? 퍼펙트는? 그럼 애가 왜 죽냐?
They also heard from the nurses that Somi had been very strange after the operation, as if she had developed delusions or was possessed by a ghost. They talked about it with great relish, but they didn't expect that Somi's father in the car nearby had heard everything. He was so angry that he got out of the car, slammed the door, and left. But when he returned to the funeral site, he still couldn't have a peaceful moment. Somi's classmates also came to pay their respects. After paying their respects, according to the custom, they were supposed to have a meal here. While eating, the children started chattering about Somi.
차소미 귀신 들렸다고 겁나 씹어댈 때는 언제?
They even had evidence. Because after Somi returned to school after the operation, her temperament changed drastically. She even pushed a male classmate down, causing his arm to be fractured, and he was still wearing a cast. But the male classmate didn't blame Somi. He always felt that Somi really seemed to be possessed by something, and that it was the thing on Somi that did the bad deeds. When Somi's mother heard everyone's discussion, instead of getting angry, she even felt somewhat empathetic. Because after the operation, Somi had attacked her when she got home. At that time, it was Somi's father who rushed over and barely pulled Somi away. And the words that came out of her daughter's mouth didn't seem like something Somi could say at all. When Somi came to her senses, she would also be very ashamed and apologize to her parents as if the person who did those things just now wasn't her. So Somi's family was very worried about Somi's situation and finally decided to ask Father Ban to exorcise the devil from Somi.
아빠 살려줘. 아빠 살려줘.
Listening to his daughter's increasingly shrill screams, Somi's father felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Ignoring his family's dissuasion and Father Ban's warnings, he was determined to rush in and save his daughter. He found that the door was locked from the inside, so he frantically pounded on it with his fists and smashed it with an axe. When the door finally opened, the exorcism ceremony inside had ended. Somi's father rushed into the room and saw his daughter, who was completely exhausted. He was very distressed. But at this time, Somi suddenly started shaking violently, which was extremely abnormal. Although Somi's father tried to rescue her immediately, Somi still couldn't recover her breathing and heartbeat in the end. Somi's father was reminiscing about these things and was in a trance for a moment. Suddenly, he noticed that a lot of blood had dripped into the wine glass in front of him. He looked up and found that a corner of the ceiling had been soaked with blood at some point and was still dripping blood continuously. At the same time, the female classmate who had been speaking ill of Somi suddenly fell to the ground in pain, foaming at the mouth and looking as if she was about to die. Thanks to Somi's father's timely use of the Heimlich maneuver, she spat out the thing stuck in her throat. And among that thing, there was a bunch of hair mixed in. On the other side, in the morgue, the freezer was finally repaired. After the staff pushed Somi's body into it, they suddenly heard strange knocking sounds. Then the lights in the room started flickering, and Somi under the white cloth suddenly moved. The staff were so scared that they fled the morgue in a panic. At night, Somi's family was resting in the morning hall, and her father was still keeping vigil for her. In a daze, he seemed to see Somi standing in front of him, saying that she was cold. Somi's father walked over, wanting to cover the child with a blanket. Suddenly, black liquid oozed out of Somi's body. Somi's father opened his eyes and realized it was just a dream. But when he picked up his glasses and put them on, he found that the glasses were really cracked just like in the dream. Somi's father quickly rushed to the morgue and pulled Somi out of the freezer. Afraid that his daughter would be cold, he covered her with his suit. Then Somi's father lay on the ground, holding his daughter's hand, and fell into a deep sleep. Unexpectedly, at this time, Somi's eyes suddenly opened. Meanwhile, Father Ban, who had exorcised the devil from Somi, went to see the old priest. He went home and watched the footage of the exorcism on Somi over and over again. The more he watched, the more he felt something was wrong. He had clearly driven the devil out of Somi. Why did Somi still die? Because after she called out the name Baal, she also said Millennium. Father Ben thought that there was more than one devil on Somi. The old priest knew that the problem was complicated, so he advised Father Ben not to get involved in this matter anymore. He would go to the funeral site to check the situation and report this matter to the higher-ups. But Father Ben was determined to see it through. Because he remembered that his best friend also died at the hands of a devil, and that devil was very likely the same one that was haunting Somi now. He wanted to kill the devil and avenge his friend and Somi. The first day of the funeral passed seemingly calmly on the surface. The second day was the day for putting the body in the coffin. Early in the morning, there was the farewell ceremony for the body. Somi's father found that his daughter's eyes were open. He immediately rushed to his daughter's body and then noticed a tear flowing from the corner of her daughter's eye. Somi's father wanted to take his daughter to be rescued, but he was held back by others because except for him, no one saw Somi open her eyes. But after everyone left, a huge moth suddenly crawled out of Somi's mouth. The funeral in the morning hall continued. The old priest kept his word and really came to the funeral site in person to help Somi's soul find peace. After arriving here, he always had an ominous feeling all over his body. There were gusts of cold wind at the funeral site, and many moths were gathering on the ceiling, and there was a growing trend. At this time, Somi's father was still making a fuss, insisting on rescuing his daughter's body. Somi's father had broken through numerous obstacles and snatched Somi's body away. He pushed Somi's body into the rescue room and started using electric shocks for defibrillation, hoping that Somi could recover her heartbeat. However, his repeated electric shocks not only failed to wake Somi up, but instead completely awakened the devil inside Somi's body. A blood-stained hand gradually brushed over the flowers in the morning hall, and blood suddenly flowed out of the priest's mouth. Then, uncontrollably, he banged his head against the altar. The priest's face was a mess of blood and flesh, and all his teeth had fallen out. Immediately after that, he saw countless moths flying towards him. He kept waving his hands to drive them away, but the moths were not afraid at all. His crimson eyeballs rolled, and he surprisingly saw the dead Somi standing in front of him. On the other side, Father Ban didn't give up investigating the identity of the devil possessing Somi. He saw the name Baal in a piece of information. Legend had it that a virgin who once lived in Nazareth suddenly became pregnant and gave birth to conjoined twins. The older one was named Baal, and the younger one didn't even have a name. The devil that resurrected through the bodies of the twins could confuse humans, making them kill each other and causing great destruction. So the priests finally sealed the younger one in the heart of the older one, Baal, to prevent the crime from happening again.
봉인된 심장.
Father Ben thought of something and quickly rushed to the funeral parlor. He found that the priest with a blood-covered face was just being pushed out. Priest suddenly grabbed Father Ban with his blood-red eyes.
버려지 같은 예수 종놈 새끼. 이놈들 따위가 발버둥 쳐봤자 우리를 이길 수 있을 것 같아.
Father Ben came to the morgue. At this time, Somi's body had been sent here again. Just as Father Ben was pouring holy water on Somi's body, Somi's parents rushed over. Somi's father punched Father Ban in the face and demanded to know what he was going to do to his daughter. But Somi's mother was horrified to find that countless black marks had appeared on Somi's body and were getting more and more, already spreading towards her face. Father Ben said that the reaction of the corpse to the holy water indicated that the devil was still inside Somi's body, which might be related to the heart she had transplanted. It would be best to quickly find clues about the heart donor and figure out where the devil came from. If they let it be, the devil would wake up in Somi's body, just like Jesus woke up 3 days after his death. And once the devil woke up, it would kill Somi's family first. Now they must quickly cremate the body. As long as they burn that heart, the devil might not wake up.
닥치고 소미한테 찝적대지 마. 죽여버릴 테니까.
Somi's father was scolding Father Ban, but in fact, he was very guilty. Father Ban said that there was something wrong with the heart transplanted to Somi. Of course there was a problem. It was an illegal heart that his colleague had quietly found for him. It was taken out of a living person by force. When Somi's father first learned about this, he was also furious. But to save his daughter, he still cut out the heart of that girl who was covered with wounds and still had a breath left. Now that he heard there was a devil on the heart, Somi's father rushed back to the hospital and grabbed the colleague who had found the heart for him and questioned him about what was going on with the heart. The colleague said that the donor of the heart was sent from a fire scene in Izu. It was a Russian girl who was illegally staying with her mother and was an undocumented immigrant. So the colleague thought that even if the girl died, no one would find out. The colleague told him to go to a place where Russians gathered in Izu to find Big Mama. So Somi's father rushed to Izu overnight and came to the underground bar where Russians gathered. But as soon as the people inside heard that he was looking for Big Mama, they immediately became vigilant and directly knocked Somi's father unconscious. When Somi's father woke up, he found himself tied up in an iron cage. The woman standing in front of him was Big Mama. She was a pagan from Russia and was obsessed with resurrecting the devil every day. To escape the pursuit of Russian Orthodox believers, she took her daughter and hid in South Korea. She also used her daughter as a container in an attempt to resurrect Baal.
죽은 지 사흘 만에 깨어 부활하실지니 온 세상을 피와.
But her plan failed. Russian Orthodox believers found them and planned to burn her daughter to death to prevent the devil from resurrecting. So she had to find a new container. And that container was Somi. She donated her daughter's heart to Somi, so that the devil sealed in her daughter's heart would be resurrected through Somi's body. Now that Somi's father actually wanted to stop her grand plan, she was determined to kill this guy. In this way, Somi's body would have no concerns and would be willing to fall into the devil's clutches and become the container for Baal, allowing the devil to be resurrected. Just when Big Mama's knife was about to stab into Somi's father's chest, the sound of scriptures came. Big Mama seemed to be trapped. She roared in pain and couldn't stand up anymore. It turned out that Father Ben had found this place.
주님의 뜻을 이루되 너희가 섬기는 악마 이름이 무엇이냐?
Father Ben still wanted to persuade Somi's father to burn Somi's body, but Somi's father still refused and drove away. The terrifying night ended, and the third day arrived, which was the day for Somi's funeral procession. But everyone waited for a long time and didn't see Somi's father. Seeing that there was no time left, everyone could only follow Somi's coffin and slowly leave the funeral parlor. Suddenly, the 6 people carrying the coffin staggered one after another, and the coffin fell to the ground. When they tried to lift the coffin again, they found that it was extremely heavy and couldn't be lifted by 6 adult men. At this time, Somi's father came back. He saw a blood-covered figure standing beside his daughter's coffin, and the coffin was slowly sliding towards the corner. Somi's father rushed to the coffin, picked up a fire extinguisher and frantically smashed the coffin open. Then he hugged his daughter's body and ran. The security guards rushed up to stop Somi's father. They dragged Somi's father away, and Somi's body fell to the ground. At this time, Father Ben also chased to the funeral parlor. He came to Somi's body, covered the body's eyes, and began to chant scriptures. But it was too late. The scriptures couldn't suppress the devil. Somi's body actually flew into the air in front of everyone, and that blood-stained figure on the high building was constantly manipulating Somi's body to fly towards her. Then the figure suddenly let go, Somi falling. Somi's father found that he didn't catch anything and his daughter's body disappeared out of thin air. So he frantically searched for his daughter. Finally, he came to the underground machine room of the central hospital. Somi was standing in the dark.
나 잃어버리면 움직이지 말고 그 자리에서 기다리기로. 근데 이제 더는 못 버틸 것 같아.
Somi suddenly disappeared into the darkness like this. Somi's father rushed over quickly, but then he saw that blood-covered ghostly figure. The ghostly figure disappeared in a flash. Somi's father continued to grope in the darkness and finally opened a door that hadn't been opened for a long time. The room was full of moths, and Somi was lying on the ground, also covered with moths. Somi's father wanted to rush over, but he was bounced back again and again. It wasn't until Father Ben found this place that he could approach Somi's body. Somi's father looked at Father Ben hopefully and asked if there was a way to save Somi. He knew that Somi was unwilling to die and was waiting for him to save her. Father Ben was also very surprised. If Somi's soul was still there, maybe she could really be saved. So Father Ben asked Somi's father to help chant scriptures, and he was going to exorcise the devil from Somi again. Before the ceremony started, he warned Somi's father not to be deceived no matter what he saw or heard. The exorcism ceremony began. Father Ben sprinkled holy water all over Somi's body. Soon, Somi's father saw hallucinations. The painful and trembling appearance of his daughter made his heart ache deeply. He could hardly continue chanting the scriptures. But he remembered Father Ben's words, gritted his teeth to control his emotions, and the sound of the scriptures never stopped. Finally, he got through this hallucination. But then the devil's tricks were even more terrifying. First, Somi's father found that the scriptures in his hand had become blank pages. Then he found that the scene in front of him had changed. He came to the morgue, searching for Somi one by one in the compartments, but instead found that blood-covered female ghost. The picture changed again. Somi's father found himself tied to the operating table, with his colleagues and Somi's mother surrounding him, about to cut out his heart while he was still alive. Just when Somi's father was about to lose his grip, it was Father Ben's soul-capturing bell that awakened Somi's father's will. But then Somi's father saw another hallucination. This time, he thought that Father Ben was the devil who wanted to kill his daughter. So he immediately picked up a scalpel, pinned Father Ben to the ground, and the knife was about to stab into Father Ben's neck. Even so, Father Ben still kept chanting incantations. However, as long as the spellcasting didn't stop, he couldn't break free from Somi's father's restraint. But at this moment, somehow, Somi's soul threw herself on her father, preventing his action. Her daughter's voice awakened Somi's father's will. Father Ben narrowly escaped death and could finally take a breather. The exorcism was coming to an end and was about to succeed. Now it was time for the most crucial step, to call out the devil's name and completely drive it out of Somi's body. Seeing that Father Ben was about to faint and the exorcism was just one step away from being completed, Somi's father kept asking his daughter how to save her. Suddenly, his daughter's soul appeared again, held a scalpel against her father's neck, and angrily accused him of being a despicable person. In order to save his daughter, knowing that the heart was illegal, he still inserted the scalpel into the poor child's chest. Somi's father understood the demon's meaning. To save his daughter, he must sacrifice himself. The demon had thought that Somi's father would not go through with it, but in the next second, he forcefully plunged the knife into his own chest. In the next second, the black marks on Somi's body were fading away, and all these marks climbed onto her father's face. So when Somi's mother found Somi, she found that the child actually had a weak heartbeat and breathing. The doctors quickly took her to the rescue room, and soon her heartbeat, breathing, and body temperature all returned to normal. And Father Ben, who was covered with injuries all over his body, was also sent to the emergency center for rescue. But when Father Ben woke up, he saw that moth symbolizing the devil again. He followed the moth to the top floor of the hospital. He saw Somi's father wandering on the top floor. Because he had negotiated with the devil and the devil had transferred to his body, Somi was able to survive. But the devil would control the possessed person and make them kill their closest relatives. That's why Somi was about to strangle her mother. Now Somi's father's mind was also full of thoughts of killing his relatives. He knew that he would soon be completely controlled by the devil. Father Ben really wanted to help Somi's father exorcise the devil, but Somi's father didn't want to involve others anymore.
잠시만. 제가 도울게요.
Somi's father didn't die immediately. He used a lighter to light the car on fire and burned himself and the devil to death completely. Somi's father's sacrifice was not in vain. Somi quickly recovered and returned to school life like a normal person. She came to the cemetery with her mother and younger brother to visit her father. In this lifetime, she would never forget that it was her father who sacrificed his life to save her. Of course, she was also grateful to Father Ben for giving her a chance to be reborn.